Myles Garrett wants out of Cleveland. We know the 49ers like to take big swings, but is Myles Garrett the answer? We'll talk about it next. What is good, everybody? Welcome to Under Review with Stats and Vish on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. If you are watching on the stream, you see an older, wiser, more facial hairier Vish Kumar, and is finally back on the pod. I think it's been almost a month, Vish. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Rob. I've had a rough journey through life and have a little bit of scruff to show for it.
That's right. Vish has seen some things in the past 3 weeks, things that he can't unsee, but he is here. He's back. While you were gone, some stuff happened, man. Robert Saleh is back with the 49ers. We can talk about that.
Back like he never left, man.
Right. Tim Kawakami had some very interesting quotes about Brock Purdy's contract, which we'll talk about, but we got to start with the Myles Garrett news. He officially requested a trade out of Cleveland, Bish. I've seen these 49ers trade for Christian McCaffrey. I've seen him trade for Trent Williams. I've seen him trade for Dee Ford. Should I see them trade for Myles Garrett?
I mean, it's worth a conversation, right? He's that caliber of player. He's a Hall of Famer at a premium position, and he's still got a couple years, I would say, left in his prime at the very least, right? I think he's nearing 30 coming into this year. So you would imagine at least 31, 32, a guy that's in the peak physical shape that he's in. You would expect that sort of production to continue. I guess the bigger question is, what would the 49ers have to give up to acquire him, right? Because I think we're back in the Khalil Mack, Jalen Ramsey conversation of deals again. And we haven't been in this realm of 2 first-rounders for a defensive player in a long time. I think that's what Myles Garrett is going to cost. I think he's better than both Mack and Ramsey, even though they were slightly younger at this points in their career. The second part of it is because Cleveland has to incur, I think it's $36 million of dead cap while trading Myles Garrett. I'd imagine they want a pretty hefty return additional to the 2 first-round picks. And for the 49ers case, given that Garrett's probably due for new money sometime in the next couple of years as well, does that mean you trade Bosa for Myles Garrett? Is that what you're thinking? No, right? You wouldn't do that. You want to pair Bosa and Myles Garrett. So if you're giving up picks and then you're getting Myles Garrett with a team that's already kind of wrapped into quite a few long-term large contracts, I come to the conclusion, Rob, that I don't think they should do it.
Ooh, I totally understand your thinking. And it definitely depends on what it would take. Hell, Fish, I just saw Luka Doncic get traded for a song. For nothing. So it depends on what the offer would be. David Lombardi had a tweet out earlier, which you can see if you're watching on the stream. The remainder of Myles Garrett's contract, 2025, he's got a $1.3 million base salary with a $5 million roster bonus. 2026, same thing. Salary cap hits of $6.3 million for an acquiring team, and Garrett might not demand a new deal until after 2025 since his main goal is winning the title. I'd have to see the parameters of the deal. Here's the thing. He's too good not to at least investigate. You have
Absolutely.
He's so good. It would be him and Bosa would be devastating. It's exactly what this defense needs now that Robert Saleh is back, because they love to rush with 4. If you have Myles Garrett on one side and Nick Bosa on the other, holy hell, can you do some damage to anybody in the league? Chiefs, Eagles, Ravens, Bills, whoever. That would be incredible to have. So you have to investigate it. But I do think that there are some prices that would be too rich for the Niners' blood.
I think this conversation's fascinating because when I reflect on my own takes on it, it brings out like what I like in football, I think. And there's a part of like my football backbone in watching the sport that I just think it's wrong to just constantly be trading for these superstars, trading these picks for these superstars. And I think that's why sometimes in these conversations, because when you lay it out like that, it makes total sense. even then, I'm hesitant to do it because for me, when I look at the 49ers' best path forward and the best plan forward, I look at 11 draft picks this year. I look at the fact that the draft is deep at 3 positions of need: defensive tackle, tight end, running back. And if I'm the 49ers and what I think the 49ers would do this offseason if this Myles Garrett thing doesn't show up is they're going to go capture the rest of their needs in free agency. So maybe grab a couple of backup offensive linemen, bring back a Jalen Moore, sign Dre Greenlaw, maybe get another backup linebacker, a backup safety to come in there and compete, and a couple of needs. And then they're going to go into the draft 2 defensive tackles, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends with, 6 of their picks. And that's how I imagine them going about it. I think it's an amazing team building strategy. And theoretically, right, that's how you build it up. You reload it, you pay Brock Purdy. That's what makes sense. But you're right, Rob. And I would never say anything wrong with trading for Myles Garrett. That's just where my mind is. And that's why I don't want to trade for him.
And I've seen a lot of people say that, right? And of course, that'd be the plan. If you could tell me that all these guys that they pick are going to be good, I'd be totally on board with that plan. But we don't know that, right? There's a risk in drafting these guys. You've got to, that coin's got to come up heads a bunch of times for that plan to pay off. With Myles Garrett, there's only one side of the coin. It's heads. We know exactly what you're getting. You're getting
right. He's going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Andre Garibay says, you can't keep giving up multiple first-round picks. Yes, you can. You get new ones every year. The NFL gives them to you. You can keep up giving first-round picks. Don't let what happened with the Trey Lance deal affect this deal. The 2 deals are not related. And this is not the Trey Lance deal at all. You were giving up multiple picks for a complete unknown in the Trey Lance deal. This is not that. You'd be giving up multiple first-round picks for a Hall of Famer in his prime, in his absolute prime right now. It's not the same deal. Don't let what happened in 2021 influence what you think could happen in 2025.
I also think Garrett's a very different kind of player that we talk about, right? Because there's not been players like Garrett available many times in the history of the NFL. Garrett being available via trade isn't Khalil Mack being available, even though Khalil Mack had won a Defensive Player of the Year. I think, and I don't want to go this far because it wasn't when I was alive, and he's obviously one of the greatest defensive players ever, and I don't know that Garrett's there yet, but it's like Reggie White being available and moving in free agency. Garrett is one of the 2 best defensive players in the sport, and he's comfortably been that for, 3-4 years? Him and Donald Jones, him and Jones, right? Him and Parsons. It's been like that, and he's physically dominant. He's still in his prime. He produces every year. He produces despite double teams, despite what's going on in Cleveland. He is the kind of player that regardless of what you invest in him, you think the return is going to be that. It's like trading for Trent Williams, right? Even if the 49ers gave up very little for Trent Williams, but even if they gave up a lot more in return, you knew you were getting a Hall of Famer. That's very different. You don't trade for Hall of Famers usually. That's never available.
I completely agree with you. It's a different. You're trading for a guy that would make Nick Bosa the second best pass rusher on your team. Think about that. This is a team that was depending on Yetur Gross-Matos to be their second best pass rusher last year. Again, and I'm not saying pay any price. I'm saying you got to investigate it. You have to see what it would take. Mike Rotunda says draft picks are overrated. An unknown for a known. Easy decision for me. Moonman Ed says second rounder in Debo. Who says no?
The Browns.
Right. Well, I would try to put Debo in the deal. Absolutely, I would try to put Debo Samuel in the deal. Give you pick 11. I'll give you Debo, and I'll give you a second round pick next year that could become a first if Garrett has double-digit sacks.
You know what I try doing if I'm the Browns? I don't know if this works, but I think this is the way I do business at this point, especially because the entire league's pissed off at me anyway because of the Deshaun Watson deal. I say, you want Garrett? You got to take the Watson contract from me too.
I'm sure they're going to try it. And if the Niners do that, then they deserve to be.
No, dude. No.
But if you're the Browns, you got to try that. Why not, right? If there's even a chance it might work. Again, Luka Doncic just got traded for a bag of cats. I was just on ESPN radio last night breaking it down. So You got to try everything for sure.
Well, we're not a basketball show, Rob, but is the conspiracy theorist, the tinfoil hat guy in you, thinking this was a move to save ratings?
It's the craziest, most ridiculous trade I've ever seen. Like, ever. Like you were just saying with Myles Garrett, players like this don't become available. That's exactly what I said about Luka. 5-time first-team All-NBA at age 25. Those guys don't change teams. You don't get traded. Like, they don't. Same thing with Myles Garrett. Like, someone just said, this is like the Reggie White trade. Reggie White wasn't a trade. He was a free agent.
Right. But guys like at the time, it was historic because players like Reggie White are never available in the open market, right? That's why it's considered one of the greatest, most franchise-turning historical free agent signings of all time. The thing with the Luka thing that I find fascinating is, and what I compared it to is I was discussing on Twitter. I compared it to, it would be like the way Luka getting traded is like Lamar Jackson right now. The Ravens just out of the blue, just trading him for Matthew Stafford in the middle of the year. But then someone replied to me and pointed it out. It's worse than that. Because it's like trading Lamar for not another quarterback, but like a 30-year-old defensive player with some injury problems, but a few all-pros. It's a little bit different from that. It's like trading Lamar for maybe like a Khalil Mack.
Yeah, I didn't mean to derail us, but I'm just saying teams do stupid things sometimes. And so it's worth investigating if you're the Browns, if a team will do a stupid thing, and if you're the Niners, same thing. Harold McAllister says Garrett would allow us to focus on interior linemen, which this draft is full of. Look, it would take a lot of picks. I'm sure it would take a lot. You have to investigate it. I mean, just for what the defense would be. How much better is your defense if you've got those two guys? He makes your linebackers better. He makes your secondary better. He makes everybody better.
I also feel like in these type of cases, and maybe this is like the naive Moneyball in me, like being able to analyze, the NFL is just logical pieces rather than actual people. But I feel like when there's a player of this caliber available and the price is going to be high, why not just throw a bid to just give an offer that raises the ante? Even if you don't end up having a chance at getting him, why not create some sort of push to raise the price and force what they're going for? I guess I don't want to argue with myself, but counterintuitive to my point, it would be like, because you want to control the price of things going in the league, because the next time you would want to trade for a player of Myles Garrett's caliber, you wouldn't want to pay as much. But at the same time, wouldn't you want, like, let's say the Rams are going after Myles Garrett heavy, which I'm sure they will. They will go after everything with Myles Garrett. Wouldn't you want them paying 4 first-rounders if they want to get Myles Garrett? I can't hear you, Rob.
Sorry about that. I said, well, it's funny that you bring up the Rams, Vish, because I don't know if did you see the tweet from one Cooper Kupp?
I did, actually, right before our show.
Right before the show, Cooper Kupp throws out on Twitter and says, the Rams are going to trade me immediately. Quote, I was informed that the team will be seeking a trade immediately and will be working with me and my family to find the right place to continue competing for championships. I don't agree with the decision and always believed it was going to begin and end in LA. Still, if there's one thing I learned over the years, blah, 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 blah. Rams take bigger swings than the 49ers. Is this the Rams trying to shuffle some things around, Vish, and potentially go after Myles Garrett themselves?
No, this is the Rams being smart. Cooper Kupp is old. Cooper Kupp has been injured too much. Cooper Kupp is not the same player that he was. Their offense has more talented players. Their offense was built more around Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua is much better than Cooper Kupp. Kyron Williams is a stud. They have other things going for their offense. They were throwing to the tight ends even more by the end of the season. So I just don't. I see them looking at Cooper Kupp. He was a great player, but they're trying to move their franchise on away from that. And it's not that you can just mute Cooper Kupp's role, because Cooper Kupp was a great player and he's a guy people look up to and he's an inspiration for this locker room. You have to move on from that entirely. I think they do this a lot better than the 49ers. And I think that's why McVay has had these seasons where even when they're down, they lose a playoff game. I think it's because, well, obviously one is Stafford, but then the second thing is they move on from some of these guys, even if they have to, and they make the hard decision and move on. I think this is a great example for Deebo Samuel.
Well, don't forget, last year before the trade deadline, the Rams were calling teams to get them to trade for Cooper Kupp. So this isn't even new. Like, they wanted to get rid of him during the season last year. Ultimately, it didn't come to fruition. We all know how it turned out. But yeah, it does say something that Sean McVay is willing to say, hey, this was one of my guys, right? One of the guys that helped us win a Super Bowl in a big way. And we're done with him. We are done.
I mean, the guy's ruthless, dude. He gave Jared Goff historic guaranteed money and then said he was done with him a year later. He was like, I want to play John Wolford in the playoff game.
Right. Yeah. So kudos to the Rams. But I do think that they're going to be in on the Myles Garrett thing. The Lions, I'm sure if you're a Lions fan, right? Like, you give if they want
Bills.
3 first, if you're a Lions fans, trade the 3 first. What do you care about first round picks if you're a Lions fan? You've seen 60 years of first round picks not amount to squat, right? So the Lions are going to be in. So your strategy of like, hey, the Niners should throw something in there just to up the ante for everybody else. I agree. If somebody else is going to get them, at least make it cost a lot.
The Bills will be in for sure. Like, the Bills will be in. I don't know if the Bills will be in for sure. Let me amend that. The Bills should be in for sure. Mm-hmm. This is what the Bills need. Like, the big difference between the Bills and the Chiefs is Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, but then Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie. The Bills don't have any other blue chip players like that in that realm. They never have had them. Even Stephon Diggs wasn't one of those sort of guys. Poyer, Hyde, not those. They never had that sort of guy, right? Myles Garrett, right there, that'd be that sort of guy. They probably won't do it. And then I think Philadelphia, no matter what happens in the Super Bowl, they will be a team that'll probably be interested in trying to get Myles Garrett for sure. This is their type of deal.
Yeah, I would. I mean, the Eagles check in on everybody for sure. So I agree with that. They'll definitely be on board. It's going to be pricey because there are so many teams involved. You're going to have to win a bidding war. I don't know if the Niners are necessarily equipped to do that, unless for some reason that you could include players in the deal. I don't, other than Deebo, like, I don't know who the Niners have. You're not putting Bosa in the deal, obviously. So
Bears would be another.
Yeah, maybe.
Keep an eye.
Did you see what Diamador Lenore tweeted? I love Lenore, man. He's just out there. He's throwing in, stirring up Max Crosby trade rumors. Now we've got this Myles Garrett thing. He tweets at him, what type of animal you want to be? We got hyenas, bears, lions, and gorillas. Who's the lion? He's the hyena. The gorilla is Trent Williams.
Dre Greenlaw's the lion.
Dre Greenlaw's the lion? I never heard of that.
I'm calling him the lion.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, well, everybody else matches up with a person. Lenore is the hyena. Nick Bosa is the bear. The gorilla is the silverback Trent Williams. I don't know who is there a lion on the team? I don't know about.
Oh, chat. Good point. That's my fault. I wasn't even looking at it that way.
Yeah, help me out here, chat. I don't see it, but I like that Lenore is out there. Like, he just gets in it right away. Oh, JJ00 on Twitch says, I think he means the tiger, Hufanga, maybe the Tongan tiger, right? Isn't that what he's called?
The guy's not even on the team anymore, Rob. Come on.
That's true.
I'm kidding.
He won't be. The franchise says Warner. I don't know. I don't remember anybody on the 49ers having any sort of a lion nickname. But I saw a tweet from Marcus Mosher that I want to throw up on the screen. Just give me a second here. Because he said something that I kind of disagree with. He said, the one trade I think makes sense for both sides would be to trade Myles Garrett to San Francisco for the 11th pick and change. San Francisco would be among the Super Bowl favorites with Garrett, and they kind of have to go all in right now with their current roster. Cleveland could add another top 11 pick and reset the roster quickly. I don't agree with Marcus saying, well, we have to go all in because of the state of the roster. All that does is guarantee that you stay old and stay having to go all in every year. Like, you don't have to go all in every year because of the state of the roster. You could not do that and restock the roster, and then all of a sudden the state of your roster looks different. So I just disagreed with his thinking there.
Yeah. I feel like, and this is kind of, this might be a stretch in terms of connecting these two things, but I feel like if you feel like next year is the last year you have to go all in, it's almost an indictment of what you think of Brock Purdy. Because if you're planning to sign him long term, you should feel like even if we retool and restock, we're gonna get 3, 4, 5 more chances at this thing just because we have Shanahan with Brock Purdy. That should be the idea of what you're thinking when you're giving a quarterback a long-term deal, because you're going to understand that you're going to have to make some sacrifices in a certain way just because that guy is making that much money. But if you feel like, damn, even though we're going to give him this contract, we'll figure out this contract later. We need to go all in now. We need to stack this roster. That's the only way we can get it. It's kind of an indictment of the fact of giving him this contract altogether because you feel like you need to stack all the dominoes in your favor to even have a chance at it in the first place, which means that when you do pay him and when you do have years where you have to go through retooling your roster, restocking it, and dealing with turmoil, you feel like you have no shot at it because you have to be totally stacked to have a shot at it in the first place. Weird connection. I totally understand if people argue with it. That's kind of how I see it when you say something like that, Rob.
No, I kind of agree. Like, what did Joe Burrow say? Right? The Super Bowl window is my whole career. If you've got a quarterback that is that good, that you think is that good, which you're about to pay him to be that good, we think, and we could talk about that in a minute, then you shouldn't like worry about having to have the Avengers around him. Like the Super Bowl window, you shouldn't worry about like it's a win now team. Every team should be a win now team because you have that guy that's that good. So I agree with you. I think those two things, it should be an obvious connection, quite frankly.
Right. And obviously Chiefs and Bills are extreme examples, but they've like made the AFC Championship game and won the Super Bowl in years that people have looked at them in the offseason and said they're retooling. They've lost more guys than they've added. They're starting a lot of young guys, a lot of new guys, right? I mean, the 2 years ago when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, getting rid of Tyreek Hill and all of that, that was supposed to be their retooling year. So many young guys, the Karlaftises, the McDuffies, all of that, and they won the Super Bowl. Now that's Mahomes. Purdy is not necessarily Mahomes, but if you are that sort of franchise guy, Rams with Matthew Stafford the last couple of years, even when you're developing a young team, you should still feel like, man, we can get into the playoffs because we have our quarterback and we have a great coach, and them together should have us at a level where our team can grow with them.
I agree with that. Everything you said makes complete sense. This comment from Mike says, it's not that Purdy isn't the guy. It's that now they don't have the money for other players anymore because we have to pay Brock. Well, first of all, like they could pay Brock and they're still going to have Kittle and Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams and Bosa and Warner. All those guys are still on the team. Okay. The Eagles are going to play in the Super Bowl in less than a week. They've paid their quarterback. They paid 2 wide receivers. They paid Saquon Barkley. Like, what are we talking about here? How they've got stars around the quarterback that they paid, but somehow the 49ers can't? I don't buy that argument.
Yeah, I also think it's the style of conversation, because it's not that the quarterback doesn't need other guys. It's that the quarterback should be more important than the other guys, right? You should be okay with getting rid of these other guys because you have Purdy and you think, well, you might not have another Brandon Ayuk, but maybe if we draft a first-round receiver, he can develop because Purdy is that good at quarterback. And it's more valuable to have Purdy with a first-round receiver than it is to have Brandon Ayuk with some random quarterback. That's kind of the comparison you're making. Not a scenario that would happen in either case for the 49ers, but that's kind of how you have to draw these things, I feel like, when you're talking about it. And I think that should be the thinking when you're thinking of Brock Purdy. His contract doesn't really affect anybody else because everybody else that you would want to have, you only want to have if they are with Brock Purdy in the first place. You don't want to have them unless they're with Brock Purdy. He's the most important guy that you want to have. That's how the thinking should be around his contract.
Snack says the Eagles lucked out. They drafted well and got Fangio. Well, the 49ers have Robert Saleh. They're coming off their best draft class in years, and they got 11 picks this year. So, like, again, you can do it. It's we've seen.
The Eagles also lucked out with the Lions just wetting the bed, for lack of a better term.
Well, but that's like you can't control that. Like, but the idea that you can't build a good team once you pay the quarterback is just incorrect. It's not correct.
I also think, Rob, like a couple of things, right, the Eagles had going for them, getting certain picks, like getting a first rounder for Carson Wentz was pretty insane. And they were able to get a couple picks that way. And like, shoot, if the 49ers at 11 draft Jalen Carter, if it's one of those sorts of situations, like It is, but like for them to be in that position where they're coming off of a Super Bowl and then land with the 9th pick in the draft to draft Jalen Carter, it's one of those things. It's one of those things. It's like the Lakers winning the NBA or having Kareem and then having the 1st overall pick and getting Magic too. I'm mixing up sports analogies, so I'll stop. But
It's okay.
it's a really insane thing. Like Jalen Carter is a really special individual player. Like he was the best player on a team of all NFL starters on Georgia, all NFL starters, and Jalen Carter as an underclassman was the best player.
This just in, you got to draft well. Like, yeah, I agree, but like they didn't luck out. They scouted those guys. They picked them because they thought they were good. You know, like they were able to get a deal for Carson Wentz. They got a 1st-round pick. They didn't win a church raffle to get a 1st-round pick. They convinced the Colts to give it to them. So, you know, it's skill. The guys got to be good at their job. 49ers,
it is. You're right. You're right.
Mostly skill. It's some luck. I agree with you. It's great for the Eagles that they didn't have to worry about the Lions. But that happens to every team. Tom Brady once had to play Marcus Mariota's backup in Tennessee in the playoffs one year. Like sometimes that stuff happens to you. So I don't agree with, well, we can't pay Brock because we'll never be able to have anybody good around him. We have literally staring an example in the face in the Philadelphia Eagles that flies completely contradictory to that thought. Iceman 0072, thanks for the super chat, says, which Avenger is Stats and which Avenger is Vish? I don't know. I can tell you which Avenger I like the best. I'm a Captain America guy. That's me.
Oh, Mr. Steve Rogers. Look at him.
Yeah, I like Steve Rogers, man.
Who do you think I like the best? There's a question.
I don't know. You're a man of intelligence. I'm gonna say Black Panther. Powerful.
He is up there, and I actually like his sister is Black Panther too. I thought that movie was great.
Yeah, sure.
But I've always liked Iron Man the best.
He's pretty great.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Minus the drinking problem, but
it comes with the territory.
He didn't play that up.
Eccentric philanthropic billionaire, whatever he says.
Yeah, they played it up in one movie. They sort of ignored the whole alcoholism thing, which is a big thing in the comics. Anyway.
Is it actually? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Groovy says Vish is a Lakers fan now.
I wish. But dude, Pistons, they're going to make the playoffs this year. Cade Cunningham's an all-star. What are we talking about? Come on, let's talk basketball.
The franchise says, didn't we pay people after Jimmy became the highest paid guys? The cap goes up. He's right. Right.
It was the inverse situation, though, right? Because Jimmy was the first to get paid on a team of a lot of people on rookie contracts at that point, besides DeForest Buckner, who was coming up, and a few other free agent signings. Now Brock is coming into a team where there's a lot of big long-term contracts amongst the highest in the NFL. But he's right, and you're right. Like, you can pay players. And by the way, me and you, Rob, this is on us too. We are two of the people that talk about how great Kyle Shanahan is as a coach and how great the coaching staff is because of how great Kyle Shanahan is as a coach. Well, then you should have no problem drafting and developing, right? That's what the Eagles do. Jeff Stoutland takes Jordan Mailata from rugby and turns him into an all-pro left tackle. You have Mekhi Becton, who was a flop as a left tackle, couldn't keep his weight down. Now he's a hell of a guard for the Eagles. Like, they're able to draft quality players and develop them in their system. We expect the 49ers to be able to do the same thing. That's what Kyle Shanahan should be really good at. That's what all the best teams do. And so I think the onus on having a good team isn't really on what you pay Brock Purdy. It's on Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch to surround talent, manage the cap properly. It's the difference between the Chiefs and the Bills, man. You can get that quarterback, but the Chiefs manage everything around the quarterback really, really well, and the Bills have a good coach, and Brandon Beane is not that good of a GM, but he's really good with the media.
That's a key part of it. Here are some names that the 49ers acquired after paying Jimmy Garoppolo, okay? Fred Warner, Mike McGlinchey, DJ Reed, Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, Dre Greenlaw, Brandon Ayuk, Javon Kinlaw, Jawan Jennings, Diamador Lenore, Talanoa Hufanga. Like, yeah, it makes the drafts way more important. I agree with you, but you're always going to be able to get good, cheap, young players. So don't think that the world is going to end just because they signed Brock Purdy to a new deal, Vish. And I got to say, I was turned around on this because, you know, I was don't pay Brock. But I talked to my friend RJ Ochoa, and he pointed out you can get out of these contracts. The Lions got out of it with Goff. The Eagles got out of it with Wentz. Even the Broncos, who had to cut Russell Wilson, made the playoffs last year. And, even though they took on that big cap hit, so like, it's not as like,
to be fair though, we do have to look at teams' histories, right? And the 49ers are a very conservative organization from the financial way they do business. They had like 4 different opportunities to get out of Jimmy's contract, and then they got out of it at like the moment when it was financially the best option for them to get out of his contract. So they've always been that way. So I don't know that they would be the kind of team that would want to move off of a contract taking $60 million of dead cap and stuff like that. So I agree with you. And I think that there's a way you can structure the contract to be protected, but I don't know that it would be the 49ers style to go all in on the contract and then all out. That's not their history.
But maybe change.
Okay, fair.
Like, different circumstances require different action. So we'll see if they actually do. Talking about the Brock Purdy contract, by the way, I don't know if you saw this from Tim Kawakami in the San Francisco Standard. He said, I heard from a plugged-in NFL source this week the Niners and Purdy's camp are indeed feeling like there won't be fireworks. But I've also heard generally the framework might be a little different than some other recent quarterback deals. I suspect this means the Niners could be pitching a shorter-term, lesser guaranteed deal compared to the full commitment deals signed by Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, and others. Will Purdy and his agent be happy with that? There'll be negotiations. Nobody makes their best offer right off the bat. It might take time.
That sounds Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield to me. Maybe a little sweeter because he's doing it with the same team.
You think Brock's going to take that deal?
I think at a certain point, this Brock Purdy conversation is going to turn into, if the 49ers did put him up for sale, what would be his value on the open market?
Only takes one team.
And I think you have to just think about that conversation. Think about the fact for 50% of the league, this guy is probably not an option to even start just because of where they play weather-wise.
It's true.
It's the truth. It seems like you think there's not – in the AFC, think about the quarterbacks that have made the Super Bowl in the last 30 years, 20 years, right? It's Flacco, Roethlisberger, Manning, Brady, Mahomes. They're all big. Right? Big quarterbacks. It's what it takes in the NFC because you play a lot of bad weather playoff games. You play in Kansas City, a lot of cold games. And so when you start looking at it from that standpoint, I think that this negotiation is going to become difficult for him. I don't know if he'll take it, Rob, but I think it'll start to become, he'll start to get pigeonholed towards it. Pressured towards it because I think it'll turn into a situation of if I don't get it here, will I get it?
Or maybe it'll be the kind of thing where he'll be like, I would get more on the open market, so I'm going to play out the rookie deal and hit the open market, and then I'll show you. Although
he's the NFL Isaiah Thomas, man.
Technically, he wouldn't be able to.
He's the NFL Isaiah Thomas, man.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Remember short little Isaiah Thomas MVP run with Boston, one injury away for that little guy from missing out on that contract. Man. And I say little, like these are big people, little relative to their sport, but big people. But yeah, that's that. He was also late pick, way outperformed.
Well, yeah, that's always the risk. But here's the thing. Name me the quarterback that got hurt and didn't get their deal. Dak Prescott's ankle exploded into 1 billion pieces. He still got the deal. So name me the quarterback. Even Alex Smith came back from the injury that he had.
No, I think you're right. I'm being like, I'm drawing these sports analogies. You know, our show needs a little entertainment value as well. It's good conversation.
I'm entertaining enough. What are you talking about?
Oh, sorry. Sometimes I think I'm funny too. Sorry. But I actually I just don't think that if he hit the open market he's going to be coveted more than for that sort of contract. That's really the point I'm also trying to make. And that's where, when you imagine what would he be worth, like, okay, if half the league wouldn't even think that he would be realistic for them because there's a certain physical threshold that you feel like you need for your quarterback to compete, right? He's got to be able to make certain throws consistently in certain situations and weather. 49ers aren't that team, so it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter on that side. But if you're only marketable to then 16 teams, of which maybe 8 already have a quarterback, 4 might not want to run the kind of offense that would suit having you as a quarterback, which leaves you with 4 teams. I think all 4 teams would say, if it's just us 4, you're worth the Baker Mayfield or worth the Geno contract. And I think his contract will be bigger than both of them for sure. So if it's short term, that sort of structure, but it's bigger than them, even if everything he's done statistically and age and everything seems like it should deserve more, I feel like that's how the negotiation is going to turn out for him.
If that's how it goes, it may take way longer than we think, which I think would be a disaster for the 49ers. We'll see how it all turns out. I forgot to play this earlier. I apologize. Going back to the Myles Garrett thing, because we were talking about should the Niners trade for Myles Garrett. At the end of Tim Kawakami's Plus Minus, he did a Plus Minus podcast about the Luka trade, and he was talking about all of that. And then literally as the outro music is playing, Tim Kawakami said this.
49ers now got to do something. There was a couple of rumors, of wild rumors that were not going to happen. Like, whoa, that would be great for them. I'll take that to write about. A little newsy. Not going to happen. Don't aggregate me even saying there might not, but there was some rumors came across my computer. I rejected them.
So that was before the Myles Garrett news broke that he said this, but it was just hilarious that literally he said, hey, there were some crazy 49ers rumors about getting involved in a pass rusher. And then like, the next day, Myles Garrett says, hey, I want out of Cleveland. Does that sway you in any way?
You think it was about Garrett or Crosby?
It could be Crosby. I have no idea. It could be any number of people. Could be Trey Hendrickson from Cincinnati.
True.
I'm just all I'm doing is passing it along, right? It's something he said that's relevant to the news of the day.
Here's my thing, though, too. The Rams have proven the athletes coming in the front 7 are like, this is the freakiest we've ever had in terms of front 7 athletes coming into the NFL. And it's the worst in terms of offensive linemen, but it's the best in terms of like freaky, just pass rushers, all of it. Like the Rams in 1 year lost arguably the greatest defensive player we've all seen since Lawrence Taylor, and have completely built their front 7 where they have a top 5 front 7 in the sport between Braden Fisk, Byron Young, Jared Verse, Kobe Turner. It's awesome, and it's young. So I love trading for these veteran players who make a lot of money, but I look at the 49ers assets, and yeah, Drake Jackson sucks, but it's hard to pick a great defensive player in your front 7 if your first pick is at 64. Now you got 2 picks in the top 60. You got a real chance to go defensive tackle, and both those guys can bang. Your defense has changed next to Nick Bosa. There you go. And you did it for so cheap on a rookie contract. You get 1 backup tight end with George Kittle in a deep tight end draft. You can draft 2 running backs in this draft. This is Kyle Shanahan's wet dream draft, man.
If they're good. That's the difference, though. Like, yeah, if you told me all these guys they picked were going to be awesome, of course you'd rather do that than trade for Myles Garrett. But let's be honest, Vish. Statistically speaking,
you got to back yourself, man.
You can take any 2 defensive players you want in this draft, and their combined careers are probably not going to be half of what Myles Garrett is in reality. I mean, let's be honest.
Sure, but we're also not, Rob. We're also not talking about positions, like certain positions, like, and this is why they're the premium positions: quarterback, right, pass rusher, left tackle, corner. You're taking chances because the athletic threshold on that position is so high anyway to be a starter or even be a good player at that position. You're constantly swinging at the best of the best athletes, and it's bust proof, all of it. There's certain positions that it's not that hard to draft a certain type of prototype, right? There's a reason the 49ers haven't necessarily had busts at linebacker, right? Because They're drafting a prototype of an undersized, really athletic, hyper-aggressive player that might not be a fit for a lot of different schemes, but is a fit for their scheme at linebacker, right? Safety is another position. There's a reason they go get Deshaun Gibson. They go mix and match certain guys. They can find value because there's a certain archetype and skill set. It's not rocket science to find that. I'm coming to say I think they should be capable of fulfilling a couple of these positions in the draft. It shouldn't be so much of a crapshoot. They should be able to put their scouts on this. They should be able to they pay Chris Kasarik so much money, man. Where is the development of one of these guys? Where did they turn Javon Kinlaw into something?
That's my point, though. You're making my point for me. Oh, the 49ers, you could just draft a guy. Oh, yeah, like they did with Solomon Thomas, like they did with Javon Kinlaw, like they did with Jackson. Dude, they suck at this, okay?
I'm saying let's put some pressure on the coaches.
Well, of course, if your answer is, hey, just draft good guys, like, yeah, of course that's the answer. But what in the history of this regime has told you?
That's a $1 million defensive line coach, though, right? Am I not wrong to question the fact that there have been multiple busts on this defensive line? And look, these are talented players, and maybe all the players were biscuits. But I have a hard time, you look at Jeff Stoutland. That's a game-changing position coach. That's $1 million position coach. I'm being a hater. Why did I choose to pick out on Chris Kasarik? But seriously, that's the truth.
No, you're right. Like, they pay and they sing his praises all the time. He has to stay on through multiple defensive coordinators. It's never even a question of whether or not he's going to stay on, right? He gets grandfathered in. Well, let's see it. Let's see some of that. I'm not talking about a 6-sack year from Kerry Hyder. Like,
right.
Development. Drake Jackson should be a guy, given his physical abilities. He does have some freakish physical talent that you should be able to turn into something. And instead, he's a pumpkin. I know he was hurt last year, but he was a pumpkin when he was playing.
Even without Bosa, right? It didn't feel like, I guess, Gross Matos got better as the year got on, but he also got healthier as the year went on. And then Leonard Floyd, I guess, technically improved. I felt like they were really singing his praises excessively. I didn't think Leonard Floyd was still really that impact of a player. He peels off and gets sacks if someone else creates pressure and moves the quarterback into him, which is a good thing, right? Corralling the quarterback is a good thing. And then he's okay versus the run. Not all that great of a player, but I don't feel like we're taking players and making them outperform who they are. In fact, even for who Bosa is, I don't think Chris Kasarik is pushing Bosa beyond. Like, Bosa's an all-pro. Bosa plays like an all-pro and all of that, but I feel like Bosa should dominate in every single game at a certain level, and we've seen him do that. And I feel like it's on Chris Kasarik to get that out of him. Mike Tomlin used to always say, the best coaches good coaches can make a C player play like a B player. The best coaches can make their A players play like A players. I feel like Chris Kasarik has got an A++ player that plays like an A+ player in Nick Bosa. And so these are margins, but did you expect to come into this show ripping on Chris Kasarik? I did not. Look at where we got.
Who knows where it's going to turn? I've only got a little bit of time left because I got to hop on a Bleacher Report stream with Michelle Majuk at the top of the hour. But I want to get your take since we're talking about getting the most out of Nick Bosa and this defense. Robert Saleh is back. Is he the guy that can squeeze the juice from that orange, Vish?
Yeah, I think Robert Saleh is a great coach. I really do. I think he should still be a head coach. I think he was fine as a head coach. To me, he's still an unknown. So I don't think Saleh will be an issue. I just wanted something new, Rob. I liked Dennis Allen coming in. I know Dennis Allen is supposed to be a super quirky guy, but I think he's super creative and super smart as a defensive coordinator, especially with Sean Payton. Some of the game plans he had as the Saints coordinator I thought were extremely creative. Mm-hmm. I thought in some ways his scheme melded with the 49ers, but in some ways it was also different. It would have been an evolution. Obviously, I can't get what I want, but that was my thinking throughout this process. I think Robert Saleh, you can't say it's a bad hire. At a certain point, I just don't like this concept of going back and retreading. Belichick bringing back Matt Patricia, especially if you're not winning with those guys. I think it's one thing for the Chiefs to go back to Nagy because they're all singing Kumbaya together. They're all winning together. I think it's another thing when a team, goes back to something they had, last time they made a Super Bowl. But that's me just reading patterns in history. That has nothing to do with what's actually going on. And Saleh's a good coach. They needed a good defensive coordinator. He's going to bring a lot for them.
I have to say I was in agreement with you, although I don't know if you watched it. I assume you didn't. I did a film breakdown of Robert Saleh with Johnny Dells, and it was fantastic. You should go check it out on YouTube. It's also available to download as a podcast, although I feel like it works better on YouTube because you could see the film. But Saleh was a lot more creative on third downs than I remember with the Jets. And so I'm hopeful that maybe my memory was failing me and that he will be more creative than I remember, because that's what I wanted more than anything. I wanted some creativity, something new, like you said. And so hopefully he'll do that.
So he was creative on third downs, even with the 49ers, especially his last year, the COVID year when they were dealing with all injuries. Like, there was a lot of creativity where they would make man look like zone and zone look like man and make the quarterback have to double clutch in the pocket and make their pass rush get there. So there's no doubt about those things. Like, Saleh is a very good coordinator, but I also feel like the 49ers, to their core, teams understand who they are principally in their schemes, right? Like, the teams understand like what their offense does and what their defense does, and they've started situationally, tactically game planning for certain things in that sense, right? They have certain game plans because they know the 49ers are going to play certain coverages on early downs because they've always played that way. So they throw a lot of out routes. You know that if you blitz the 49ers, they throw hot. So what do? 3rd and 13 every time they go cover zero, because if you throw hot and you tackle the guy, he gets 5 yards and they're going to get off the field and punt. So teams have kind of understood who they are situationally and tactically. And to me, Saleh is a guy who's sound run defense first, second down, and he gets creative on third down. But even to that, I think there's a pattern. And I wanted somebody who was going to come in and maybe break the flow of how 49ers call games, how they handle certain situations, stuff like that. To me, it's not just the X's and O's creativity. It's how you go about calling the game, how you're going to go about the pattern of when you choose to attack, stuff like that, right? Like, a Spagnuolo is a great example of this. We're going to watch this in the Super Bowl. He'll throw in a second down, a 2nd and 3, blitz out of nowhere, and it'll just disrupt the entire flow of the game, the entire flow of the offense, because he's not done that the entire game. And all of a sudden, bang, tight split, the corner comes, McDuffie hits the guy, it's 3rd and 7, and all of a sudden the entire momentum, the pressure of the game changes. Chris Jones makes a big play on the 3rd down, the game changes. They do stuff like that. I wanted a different style of coordinator in that sense, and that's where I went to Dennis Allen. I know what Dennis Allen's success is. He has a creative scheme in my mind. I haven't watched him enough to know he's going to be doing Spagnuolo type stuff, so don't get me wrong. But that's where I was thinking. Saleh's great. Saleh's really good. Saleh's creative. Saleh's organized. Saleh's always good with his game plan. Saleh understands football. All of those things are true. I agree with you, Rob, but that's where I wanted to change.
Well, that was why I liked the film breakdown so much, because from what I saw from the clips that Johnny pulled, like, there was a lot of kind of Spagnuolo-esque things in terms of getting guys to have free rushes at the quarterback and challenging you on every level, challenging you on defensive line, challenging you from the linebacker spot and from the secondary. I loved it. So I'm definitely more pumped up than I was originally. So we'll see. I mean, who knows? And supposedly now that Saleh really wants Dre Greenlaw back, so they're making a push to get Dre Greenlaw back, according to Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. So we will see how it all ultimately plays out. At least if the Niners were going to hire a former coach, it was Robert Saleh and not Chip Kelly.
Wow, you had to go there, huh?
Chip Kelly, Jim Harbaugh, and Pete Carroll are all back in the same conference again, baby. It's 2009 all over again.
That division... Pete Carroll, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, Andy Reid.
Yep.
Whew.
It's going to be crazy, man.
Can you imagine that division in 2012?
Yeah. What's your deal, man? Hopefully we see it all over again. But that's
also, Sean Payton's a pretty crazy guy.
Yes, he is.
Nuts.
I've seen some things with Sean Payton. Anyway, I don't want to get into that.
We've seen videos. We've all seen videos.
That's true. Remember, he's the guy that wheeled in the $1 million in cash into the locker room at the Pro Bowl and was like, if you win, this is what you get. Like, he literally wheeled it in. It was on like a pallet. It's like a crazy idea. I love it. But
does that work? I still don't know.
it's a little different when you see the $1 million just sitting in front of you, right? Like that's pretty friggin'. It's one thing when it's hypothetical or it's just a number in your bank account, right? But when you physically see the amount of money that because it's not $1 million bill, Vish. It's a lot of dollars.
But I'd be thinking, shoot, that's a lot. But looking at it, man, 500,000 is a lot too. And what did they get 500,000 for losing, right? They always get something for losing in the NFL.
There's a second place thing. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. I thought it was a cool move. But yeah, Sean Payton is definitely a crazy person. Vish, I hate to cut it off, but I have to do it, unfortunately. It's so good to have you back. I missed you. I like that you grew out the beard. I feel like you've
I'm going to keep it growing. We're going to have a journey together.
Okay.
Everybody saw me grow out my hair on the show. Now I've grown out my hair. I'm going to do the same thing with my beard.
There you go. So stay tuned for that over the off season.
Yeah.
Please give us a like, give us a subscribe. Really helps us. If you can support the channel as a YouTube channel member, please do that. It's less than $3 a month. Vish, I hope you have a solid Monday, and I will talk to you next week, right, sir?
Oh, you bet. We'll have a lot to talk about. Hopefully, who are we rooting for? Hopefully, somehow the game will end without either team winning.
You know who I'm rooting for? I'm rooting for the